So we are continuing to study from A Word to the Little Flock. And today we are on page 8 of A Word to the Little Flock. We're studying on the time of trouble. This is a study by James White. Interesting to find the things that he believed during this time. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was, since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake. Daniel 12, verses 1 and 2. We are taught by some that the standing up of Michael, the time of trouble, and the delivering of the saints are in the future, and that all these events are to be accomplished at the second appearing of Christ. Others teach that Michael stood up on the 10th day of the 7th month, 1844, and that since that time we have been passing through the time of trouble such as never was, and that the deliverance of the saints is at the first resurrection. But as I cannot harmonize either of these views with the Bible, I wish to humbly give my brethren and sisters my view of these events. It is clear to me that here are four distinct events, all in the future. First, the standing up of Michael. Second, the time of trouble. Third, the deliverance of the saints. And fourth, the resurrection of the just to everlasting life. That Jesus rose up and shut the door and came to the Ancient of Days to receive his kingdom on the 7th month, 1844, I fully believe. See Luke 13, verse 25, Matthew 25, 10, Daniel 7, 13, and 14. But the standing up of Michael, Daniel 12:1, appears to be another event for another purpose. His rising up in 1844 was to shut the door and come to his Father, to receive his kingdom and power to reign. But Michael's standing up is to manifest his kingly power, which he already has in the destruction of the wicked and in the deliverance of his people. Michael is to stand up at the time that the last power in chapter 11 comes to his end, and none to help him. This power is the last that treads down the true church of God, and as the true church is still trodden down and cast out by all Christendom, it follows that the last oppressive power has not come to his end, and Michael has not stood up. This last power that treads down the saints is brought to view in Revelation 13, verses 11 through 18. His number is 666. So let's pause for a minute and look at what the Bible says in Daniel 11 about this. So a number of us have been studying Daniel 11 chapters 40 through 45 and Daniel 12 verse 1. So let's take a look at who this last power is and what happens. In verse 42, he shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. This is the power from verse 41. He shall enter also into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. And when you look at verse 40, this is at the time of the end. Okay? So let's come back down here. Verse 42, he shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. And he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and Ethiopians shall be at his step. Now this verse here, verse 43, with what's happened in the economy recently in the whole world, this appears to have happened, or at least a large part of it has happened. So this is where we're at in this one, although it's going to be fulfilled more directly in the immediate future. Verse 44, but tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. So this power that's spoken of in all these verses is affected by tidings out of the east and out of the north, and he goes forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many. Like a death decree, maybe? Sounds like. Or something close to that. And then, verse 45, and he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. So this power must come to an end, like it says in this last verse in Daniel 11, before Daniel 12, verse 1, where it says, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble such as never was, since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. So this power that has to come into an end is in the glorious holy mountain, yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. And then Michael stands up. And so coming back to the study by James White, he's talking about this power. His number is 666. Much of his power, deception, wonders, miracles, and oppression will doubtless be manifested during his last struggle under the 7 last plagues, about the time of his coming to his end. This is clearly shadowed forth by the magicians of Egypt deceiving Pharaoh and his host in performing most of the miracles that Moses performed by the power of God. That was just before the deliverance of Israel from Egyptian bondage. And may we not expect to see its great a manifestation of the power of the devil just before the glorious deliverance of the saints? If Michael stood up in 1844, what power came to his end, and none to help him? At that time, it says, the trouble that is to come at the time that Michael stands up is not the trial or trouble of the saints, but it is a trouble of the nations of the earth, caused by 7 last plagues. So, when Jesus has finished his work of atonement in the Holy of Holies, he will lay off his priestly attire and put on his most kingly robes and crown to ride forth and manifest his kingly power in ruling the nations and dashing them to pieces. So we need to read the progression of what's being studied here and what the verses say, so that we clearly understand and we can weigh these events out as we see them happening and watch for Jesus' coming. We believe that our great high priest is attired as the Jewish high priest was. See Leviticus 16. But when Michael stands up to reign, King of Kings and Lord of Lords, he has on many crowns in one crown. Revelation 19, verse 16. The deliverance of the living saints is before the first resurrection, for it is spoken of as a separate event. If the deliverance of the living saints is not until the first resurrection, why is the resurrection spoken of as a separate event after the deliverance? It seems clear that the deliverance is at the voice of God. Then, from that time till Christ appears, the saints will have power over the nations who remain of the former plagues. So, We need to understand this. Where the voice of God speaks, what happens there? Remember, we did that study. Okay? So, I'm going to close this and come back to the next study.